All right, we are coming up on 8 o'clock. So, let's settle in, get comfortable, and see what we have in store tonight. Welcome back. This is our second night of reading from William Faulkner's As I Lay Dying. This one is, on the tin, it reads as a dark humor, but it's pretty heavy. The dark is doing a lot of lifting right now. There is some little bits of irony to be found here. There's a little bit of, moments. But so far, it's been a lot more depression and a lot less, oh, ha ha ha. We'll see whether that trend continues. I have a feeling it may be a little bit of both as we go on, as the implications start to sink in, and in general, things start to fall into place. But I don't think the sad is going to be going away. But we'll see. All right, so let's go ahead and jump back in where we left off. Assuming that I can remember the plethora of voices we were using, this is one of those books that Faulkner was early in the adoption of writing character by character, chapter by chapter, with different perspectives all along. Luckily, there's a relatively restrained number of characters that are given specific voice here, but, well, we'll see. Oh, hang on. Bit of a bloody nose here. It is that time of year where the air is dry, and don't you know, it just goes off anytime you decide that it's a good time to blow your nose. But that should stop it up. Anyway. Only need half a nose to breathe. So, let's get back into it. We'll be resuming from, well, there's no numbers on these chapters, but Tull is the speaking character here. Which one was Tull? Which one was Tull? Is that the doctor? Yeah, I think it was. Well, we are likely going to be changing the voices for these characters as we go, because I plumb well forgot. We'll see. Alright. Tull. It was not a midnight, and it had set in to rain when he woke us. It had been a doubtful night, with the storm making a night when a fellow looks for the most anything to happen before he can get the stock fed and himself into the house and supper et and in bed with the rain starting. And when Peabody's team come up, Peabody was the doctor, yeah, come up leathered with the whole harness broke, dragging, and the neck yoke betwixt one of the critter's legs. Cora says, "It's Annie Bundren. She's going to last." Peabody might have been a bit of air one of a dozen houses hereabouts, I says. Besides, how do you know it's Peabody's team? "Well, ain't it?" she says. You hitch her up now." "What for?" I says. "If she is gone, we can't do nothing till morning, and it fixing the storm, too." "It's my duty," she says. "You put the team in." "Oh, that's right. Tell us the neighbor." Well, generic southern farmer will do for that. But I wouldn't do it. It stands to reason they send for us if they need us. You don't even know she's gone yet. "Why, don't you know that's Peabody's team? Do you claim it ain't? Well then." But I wouldn't go. When folks want a fellow, it's best to wait till they sends for him, I found. "It's my Christian duty," Cora says. "Will you stand between me and my Christian duty?" "You can stay there all day tomorrow if you want," I says. So when Cora waked me, it set in to rain. Even when I was going to the door with the lamp, and it was shining on the glass so she could see I'm coming, it kept on knocking. Not loud, but steady. Like it might have gone to sleep thumping. But I never noticed how low down on the door the knocking was till I opened it and never seen nothing. I held the lamp up with the light sparkling across it, and Cora back in the hall saying, "Who is it, Vernon?" Vernon Tull, very, that fits. And I couldn't see nobody at all at first, till I looked down and around the door, lowering the lamp. He looked like a drowned puppy in them overalls, without no hat, splashed up to his knees where he had walked them 4 miles in the mud. "I'll be darned," I says. "Who is it, Vernon?" He looked at me, his eyes round and black in the middle, like when you throw a light in an owl's face. "You mind that here fish?" he says. Did the page turn not go off? It did not. Interesting. And, oh, you know what? We never switched over to this one. That explains it. I'm gonna have to get used to this. We now have an intro and a reading page, and it's gonna be the death of me until I remember which is which. "Come in the house," I says. "What is it now? Is your mom?" "Vernon," Cora says. He stood kind of around behind the door in the dark. The rain was blowing on the lamp, hissing on it, so I'm scared every minute it'll break. "You was there," he says. "You seen it." Then Cora come to the door. "You come right in out in the rain," she says, pulling him in and him watching me. He looked just like a drowned puppy. "I told you," Cora says. "I told you it was a happening. You go and hitch." Yeah, I rather like having the reader, but it is not part of habit yet. We'll get there. "But he ain't said," I says. He looked at me, dripping onto the floor. "He's a ruining the rug," Cora says. "You go get the team while I take him to the kitchen." But he hung back, dripping, watching me with them eyes. "You was there. You see it laying there. Cassius fixing to nail her up. It was laying right there on the ground. You've seen it. You've seen the mark in the dirt. The rain never come up till after I was coming here, so we can get back in time." I'd be darned if it didn't give me the creeps, even when I didn't know yet. Cora did. "You get the team as quick as you can," she says. "He's out in his head with grief and worry." I'd be darned if it didn't give me the creeps. Now and then a fellow gets thinking about all the sorrow and afflictions in this world. How it's liable to strike anyway, like lightning. I reckon it does take a powerful trust in the Lord to guard a fellow, though sometimes I think that Cora's a mite overcautious, like she was trying to crowd the other folks away and get in closer than anybody else. But then, when something like this happens, I reckon she is right. You got to keep her after it, and I reckon I'm blessed in having a wife that ever strives for sanctity and well-doing, like she says I am. Now and then, Bill gets to thinking about it. Not often, though, which is a good thing. But the Lord aimed for him to do and not to spend too much time thinking. Because his brain, it's like a piece of machinery. It won't stand a whole lot, I reckon. It's best when it all runs along the same, doing the day's work, and not no one part used no more than needful. I have said, and I say again, that's ever living thing the matter with Darrell. He just thinks by himself too much. All's right when she says all he needs is a wife to straighten him out. When I think about that, I think that if nothing but being married will help him, man, he's dirt nigh hopeless. I reckon Cora's right when she says the reason the Lord had to create women is because man don't know his own good when he sees it. When I come back to the house with my team, it was in the kitchen. She was dressed on top of her nightgown with a shawl over her head and her umbrella and her Bible wrapped up in oilcloth. And him sitting on the upturned bucket on the stove zinc where she had put him, dripping onto the floor. "I can't get nothing out of him except about a fish," she says. "It's a judgment on them. I see the hand of the Lord upon this boy for Aunt Bundren's judgment and warning." The rain never come up till after I left, he says. I done left. I was on the way, and so it was there in the dust. You seen it. Cash is fixing to nail it, but you seen it. When we got there, it was raining hard, and him sitting on the seat between us, wrapped up in Cora's shawl. He hadn't said nothing else, just sitting there with Cora holding the umbrella over him. Now and then, Cora would stop singing long enough to say, "It's a judgment on Aunt Bundren. May it so show him the path of sin he is trodden." And then she would sing again, and him sitting there between us, leaning forward a little like the mules couldn't go fast enough to suit him. "He was laying right yonder," he says, "but the rain come up after I'd taken the left, so I can go and open the windows, 'cause Cash ain't nailed it yet." It was long past midnight when we drove the last nail, and almost dusk dawn when I got back home and taken the team out and got back in bed. Cora's nightcap laying on the other pillow. And be darned, even then, it wasn't like I could still hear Cora singing and feel that boy leaning forward between us like he was ahead of the mules, and still see Cash going up and down with that saw, and Aunt's standing there like a scarecrow, like he was a steer standing knee-deep in a pond, and somebody come by and set the pond up on edge, and he ain't missed it yet. And nigh toward daybreak, when we drove the last nail and toted it into the house, when she was laying on the bed, with the window open and the rain blowing on her again. Twice he did it, and him so dead for sleep that Cora says his face looked like one of these here Christmas masks that had done been buried a while and then dug up, till at last they put her into it and nailed it down, so he couldn't open the window on her no more. And then, next morning, they found him in his shirt tail, laying asleep on the floor like a felled steer. The top of the box bored clean full of holes, and Cash's new auger broke off in the last one. When they'd taken the lid off, they found that 2 of them had bored on into her face. If it's a judgment, it ain't right, because the Lord's got more to do than that. He's bound to have, because the only burden Aunt Bundren's ever had is himself. When the folks talks him low, I think to myself, he ain't that less of a man, or he couldn't have bore himself this long. It ain't right. I'd be darned if it is, because if he said, "Suffer little children to come unto me," don't make it right, neither. Cora said, "I have bore you what the Lord God sent me. I faced it without fear nor terror, because my faith was strong in the Lord, a bolstering and sustaining me. If you have no son, it's because the Lord has decreed otherwise in his wisdom, and my life is, and has ever been, an open book to every man or woman among his creatures, because I trust in my God and my reward." I reckon she right. I reckon if there's e'er a man or woman anywhere that he could turn it all over to go away with his mind at the test, it would be Cora. And I reckon she would make a few changes, no matter how he was running it. And I reckon it would be for man's good. Leastways, he would have to like them. Leastways, we might as well go on and make like we did. All right, that is the end of that chapter. So, this was one of the more memorable bits that comes up in a lot of talking about the book in general. But the neighbors first finding out that the old woman had passed, that they brought the youngest boy back, helped assemble the coffin, and found in the morning that I think it was the husband, Ants, had drilled holes in the coffin because he couldn't stand not being able to open the window and look at her. Let me look back and see if it says who it was again. It's not really clear who had done it. I think it was Ants. Yeah. So, drilled holes in the coffin because couldn't stand to not see her or something. But, ooh, that's an image. That's dealing with grief in a broken way, and we won't be seeing the last of this, I'm sure. All right. Darl, this is one of the sons there. The uppity one. The one who thinks too much. Alright, I think I'm done bleeding out. Yeah, everyone agrees differently, but there are some that are just patently wrong. You're not, if it's a destructive form of grief, chances are it's not gonna do anybody any good. Alright, Darl. The lantern sits on a stump, rusted, grease-fouled, its cracked chimney smeared on one side with a sullen smudge of soot. It sheds a feeble and sultry glare upon the trestles and the boards and the adjacent earth. Upon the dark ground, the chips look like random smears of soft, pale paint on a black canvas. The boards look like long, smooth tatters, torn from flat darkness and turned backside out. Cash labors about the trestles, moving back and forth, lifting and placing the planks with long, clattering reverberations in the dead air, as though he were lifting and dropping them at the bottom of an invisible well, the sounds ceasing without departing, as if any movement might dislodge them from the immediate air in reverberant repetition. He saws again, his elbow flashing slowly, a thin thread of fire running along the edge of the saw, lost and recovered at the top and the bottom of each stroke in unbroken elongation, so that the saw appears to be 6 feet long, into and out of Pa's shabby and aimless silhouette. "Give me that plank," Cass says. "No, the other one." He puts the saw down and comes and picks up the plank he wants, sweeping Pa away with the long swinging gleam of the balance board. The air smells like sulfur. Upon the impalpable plane of it, their shadows form as upon a wall, as though they sound like they had not gone very far away and fallen, but had merely congealed for a moment, immediate and musing. Cash works on, half turned into the feeble light, one thigh and one pole thin arm braced, his face sloped into the light with a rapt, dynamic immobility above his tireless elbow. Below the sky, sheet lightning slumbers lightly. Against it, the trees, motionless or ruffled, out to the last twig, swollen, increased as though quick with young. It begins to rain. The first harsh, sparse, swift drops rush through the leaves and across the ground in a long sigh, as though of relief from intolerable suspense. They are big as buckshot, warm as though fired from a gun. They sweep across the lantern in a vicious hissing. Pa lifts his face, slack-mouthed, the wet black rim of a snuff plastered close along the base of his gums. From behind his slack-faced astonishment, he muses as though from beyond time, upon the ultimate outrage. Cash looks once at the sky, then at the lantern. The saw has not faltered, the rutting gleam of its pistoning edge unbroken. "Get something to cover the lantern," he says. Pa goes to the house. The rain rushes suddenly down, without thunder, without warning of any sort. He is swept onto the porch upon the edge of it, and in an instant Cash is wet to the skin. Yet the motion of the saw has not faltered, as though it and the arm functioned in a tranquil conviction that rain was an illusion of the mind. Then he puts down the saw and goes and crouches above the lantern, shielding it with his body, his back shaped lean and scrawny by his wet shirt, as though he had been abruptly turned wrong side out, shirt and all. Pa returns. He is wearing Jules' raincoat and carrying Dewey Dale's. Squatting over the lantern, Cash reaches back and picks up 4 sticks and drives them into the earth. He takes Dewey Dale's raincoat from Pa and spreads it over the sticks, forming a roof above the lantern. Pa watches him, I don't know what you'll do, he says. Dog taking his coat with him. Get wet, Cash says. He takes up the saw again. Again, it moves up and down, in and out of that unhurried imperviousness as a piston moves in the oil, soaked, scrawny, tireless, with the lean, light body of a boy or an old man. Pa watches him, blinking, his face streaming. Again, he looks up at the sky with that expression of dumb and brooding outrage, and yet of vindication, as though he had expected no less. Now and then he stirs, moves, gaunt and streaming, picking up a board or a tool and then laying it down. Vernon Tull is there now, and Cash is wearing Mrs. Tull's raincoat, and he and Vernon are hunting the saw. After a while, they find it in Pa's hand. Why don't you go on in the house, out of the rain, Cash says. Pa looks at him, his face streaming slowly. It is as though upon a face carved by a savage caricaturist, a monstrous burlesque of all bereavement flowed. You can go on in, Cass says. Me and Vernon can finish it. Pa looks at him. The sleeves of Jules' coat are too short for him. Upon his face the rain streams as slow as cold glycerin. I don't begrudge her the wedding, he says. He moves again and falls to shifting the planks, picking them up, laying them down again, carefully, as though they're glass. He goes to the lantern and pulls at the propped raincoat until he knocks it down and Cash comes and fixes it back. You get on in the house, Cash says. He leads Pa to the house and returns with the raincoat and folds it and places it beneath the shelter where the lantern sits. Vernon is not stopped. He looks up, still sawing. You ought to have done that at first, he says. You knowed it was fixing to rain. It's his fever, Cash says. He looks at the board. Hi, Vernon says. He'd come anyway. Cash squints at the board. On the long flank of it, the rain crashes steadily, myriad, fluctuant. I'm going to biffle it, he says. It'll take more time, Vernon says. Cash sets the plank on edge. A moment longer, Vernon watches him, then he hands him the plane. Vernon holds the board steady, while Cash bevels the edge of it with the tedious and minute care of a jeweler's. Mrs. Tull comes to the edge of the porch and calls Vernon. How near you done? She says. Vernon does not look up. Not long, so me it. She watches Cash stooping at the plank, the turgid, savage gleam of the lantern slicking on the raincoat as he moves. You go down and get some planks off the barn and finish it, and come in out of the rain, she says. You'll both catch your death. Vernon does not move. Vernon, she says. We won't be long, he says. We'll be done after a spell. Mrs. Tull watches them a while, then she re-enters the house. If we get in it tight, we could take some of them planks, Vernon says. I'll help you put them back. Cash ceases the plane and squints along the plank, wiping it with his palm. Give me the next one, he says. Sometime toward dawn, the rain ceases, but it is not yet day when Cash drives the last nail and stands stiffly up and looks down at the finished coffin. The others watching him. In the lantern light, his face is calm, musing. Slowly he strokes his hands on his rain-coated thighs in a gesture deliberate, final, and composed. Then the four of them, Cash and Pa and Vernon and Peabody, raise the coffin to their shoulders and turn toward the house. It is light, yet they move slowly, empty, yet they carry it carefully, lifeless, yet they move with hushed, precautionary words to one another, speaking of it as though, complete, it now slumbered lightly alive, waiting to come awake. On the dark floors, their feet clump awkwardly, as though for a long time they have not walked on floors. They set it down by the bed. Peabody says quietly, Let's eat a snack. It's almost daylight. Where's Cash? Yeah, Peabody was the doctor. Yeah, that's fine. He has returned to the trestles, stooped again in the lantern's feeble glare as he gathers up his tools and wipes them on a cloth carefully and puts them into the box, with its leather sling to go over the shoulder. And then he takes up the box, lantern, and raincoat and returns to the house, mounting the steps into faint silhouette against the paling east. In a strange room, you must empty yourself for sleep. And before you are emptied for sleep, what are you? And when you are emptied for sleep, you are not. And when you are filled with sleep, you never were. I don't know what I am. I don't know if I am or not. Jewel knows he is, because he does not know that he does not know whether he is or not. He cannot empty himself for sleep, because he is not what he is, and he is what he is not. Beyond the unlamped wall, I can hear the rain shaping the wagon that is ours. The load that is no longer theirs, that felled and sawed it, nor yet theirs, that bought it, and which is not ours either, lie on our wagon, though it does, since only the wind and the rain shape it, only to Jewel and me, that are not asleep. And since sleep is not, and rain and wind are was, it is not. Yet the wagon is. Because when the wagon is was, Addie Bundren will not be. And Jewel is. So Addie Bundren must be, and then I must be. I could not empty myself for sleep in a strange room. And so if I am not emptied yet, I am is. How often have I lain beneath rain on a strange roof, thinking of home? Alright, that last paragraph or so got all sorts twisted. But that is another form of grief on this. Yeah, that's just someone in their own way trying to overthink and find their own grounding and base in a sort of situation that it's okay to be lost in. So it's almost stranger to have your bearings firmly in hand. So it makes sense. It's being dazed and confused and trying to philosophize is probably a little less destructive than drilling holes in coffins. All right. Cash. I made it on a bevel. 1. There is more surface for the nails to grip. 2. There's twice the gripping surface to each seam. 3. The water will have to seep into it on a slant. Water moves easiest up and down or straight across. 4. In a house, people are upright 2/3 of the time, so the seams and joints are made up and down. Of course, the stress is up and down. In a bed, where people lie down all the time, the joints and seams are made sideways, because the stress is sideways. Except 7. A body is not square like a cross tie. 8. Animal magnetism. 9. The animal magnetism of a dead body makes the stress come slanting, so the seams and joints of a coffin are made on the bevel. 10. You can see by an old grave that the earth sinks down on the bevel. 11. While in a natural hole, it sinks by the center, the stress being up and down. 12. So I made it on the bevel. 13. It makes a needed jog. Okay, let's go back. So, this is, right now we're going through different perceptions of grief through all the family. The last one, Darl, we saw overthinking it, getting lost in his head, and Lord knows if he's going to find himself. Here we have Cash, who is a little bit more of a everyman's, like, man of action sort. And he's getting by it by being systematic about the things that he can have an impact on. The building of the coffin, in this case. Making it the best that he possibly can. Maybe overthinking it some, but in a practical sort of way. Try to sort of abstracting the events, the causes, with the here and the now and the process. And now we have a child's grief. Vardaman. My mother is a fish. Boy's just lost. There's not much to put on there. Kid's broken. You don't expect kids to deal with things well, but that is what it is. This all comes back to he had pulled up a big fish and then had to clean it himself as his mother was dying. So he's got an interesting relationship with death here, to say the very least. Tull. Yeah. They were making a big deal about it because the fish is like, he pulled it up about as big as he was, and then he just chopped it into pieces in the dirt. So that's a lot to unpack. All right, Tull. I need to get some of this coffee. The chapters in this are nice and short, but they're inexorable. Oh, I feel you there. I try my best not to think how long it's been since particular milestones like that. Alright, Tull. It was 10 o'clock when I got back. With Peabody's team hitched onto the back of the wagon. They had already dragged the buckboard back from where Quick found it, upside down, straddled on the ditch about a mile from the spring. It was pulled out the road at the spring. About a dozen wagons was already there. It was Quick found it. He said the river was up and still rising. He said it had already covered the highest watermark on the bridge piling he had ever seen. The bridge won't stand a whole lot of water, I said. Somebody told Ance about it? I told him, Quick said. He says he reckons them boys has heard and unloaded and are on the way back by now. He says they can load up and get across. You better hurry on and better go on and bear her a New Hope, Armstead said. That bridge is old. I wouldn't monkey with it. His mind is set on taking her to Jefferson, Quick said. He better get at it as soon as he can, Armstead said. Ance met us at the door. He is shaved, but not good. There's a long cut on his jaw. He's wearing his Sunday pants and a white shirt with the neckband buttoned. It is drawn smooth over his hump, making it look bigger than ever, like a white-tailed shirt will. His face is different, too. He looks folks in the eye now, dignified. His face tragic and composed, shaking us by the hand as we walk up on the porch and scrape our shoes, a little stiff in our Sunday clothes. Our Sunday clothes rustling, not looking full at him as he meets us. The Lord giveth, we say. The Lord giveth. That boy is not there. Peabody told about how he'd come into the kitchen, hollering, swarming, and clawing at Cora when he found her cooking that fish, and how Dewey Dell had taken him down by the barn. My team all right? Peabody says. All right, I tell him. I gave them a bait this morning. Your buggy seems all right, too. It ain't hurt. Ain't no fault of somebody's, he said. I'd give a nickel to know where that boy was when that team broke away. If it's broke anywhere, I'll fix it, I say. The women folks go on into the house. We can hear 'em talking and fanning. The fans go wish, 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 and them talking, the talking sounding kind of like bees murmuring in a water bucket. The men stop on the porch, talking some, not looking at one another. Howdy, Vernon, they say. Howdy, Tull. Looks like more rain. It does for a fact. Yes, sir, it will rain some more. It come up quick. It going away slow. It don't fail. I go around the back. Cash is filling up the holes he bored on top of it. He's trimming out plugs for them, one at a time. The wood wet and hard to work. He could cut up a tin can and hide the holes, and nobody wouldn't know the difference. I wouldn't mind anyway. I have seen him spend an hour trimming out a wedge like it was glass he was working. He could have just reached around and picked up a dozen sticks and drove them into the joint and made it do. When we finished, I go back to the front. The men have gone a little piece from the house, sitting on the ends of the boards and on the sawhorses where we made it last night. Some sitting, some squatting. Whitfield ain't come yet. They look up at me, their eyes asking. It's about, I say. He's ready to nail. While they're getting up, Ants comes to the door and looks at us. We return to the porch. We scrape our shoes again, careful, waiting for one another to go in first, milling a little at the door. Ants stands inside the door, dignified, composed. He waves us in and leads the way into the room. They later in it reversed. Cash made it clock shape, like this. If you can't quite see it because I'm in dark mode, it's usual, standard coffin size, or shape. So does it show? It kind of shows on the screen there. Let's see if I can flip this to light mode or something. For just a moment. Let's show a little bit better there. Yeah, kind of see it there. So the shape of the coffin there. And now we will switch back to dark mode because I am not about to flashbang everybody. Cash made it clock shape, like this, with every joint and seam beveled and scrubbed with the plane, tight as a drum and neat as a sewing basket. And they had laid her in it, head to foot, so it wouldn't crush her dress. It was a wedding dress, and it had a flare-out bottom. They had laid her head to foot in it, so the dress could spread out. And they made her a veil out of a mosquito bar, so the auger holes in her face wouldn't show. When you're going out, Whitfield comes. He's wet and muddy to the waist coming in. The Lord comfort this house, he says. I was late because the bridge is going. I went down to the old ford and swung my horse over. The Lord protected me. His grace be upon this house. We go back to the trestles and plank ends and sit, squat. I knowed it would go, Armstead says. It's been there a long time, that air bridge, Quick says. The Lord has kept it there, you mean? Uncle Billy says. I don't know e'er a man has touched hammer to it in 25 years. How long it been here, Uncle Billy? Quick says. It was built in, let me see. It was in the year 1888, Uncle Billy says. I mind it because the first man to cross it was Peabody, coming to my house when Jody was born. If I'd have crossed it every time your wife lit it since, it'd have been wore out long before this, Billy, Peabody says. We laugh, suddenly loud, then something suddenly quiet again. We look a little aside at one another. A lot of folks have crossed it that won't cross no more bridges, Houston says. It's a fact, Little John says. It's so. Yeah, there are way too many country folk around here to give all of them distinct voices here. One more ain't no ways, Armistead said. It'd taken them 2-3 days to get her to town in the wagon. They'd be gone a week, getting her to Jefferson and back. What's Aunt so itching to take her to Jefferson for, anyway, Houston says. He promised her, I say. She wanted it. She come from there. Her mind was set on it. And Aunt's set on it too, Quick says. Aye, Uncle Billy says. It's like a man that's let everything slide all his life to get set on something that will make the most trouble for everybody he knows. Ooh, damn. Well, it'll take the Lord to get her over that river now, Peabody says. Ants can't do it. And I reckon he will. Quick says. He's took care of ants a long time now. It's a fact, Little John says. Too long to quit now, Armstead says. I reckon he's like everybody else around here, Uncle Billy says. He's done it so long now he can't quit. Cash comes out. He put on a clean shirt, his hair wet, his combed smooth down on his brow, smooth and black, as if he had painted it onto his head. He squats stiffly among us, we watching him. You're feeling this weather, ain't you? Armstead says. Cash says nothing. A broke bone always feels it, Little John says. A fellow with a broke bone can tell it a-coming. Lucky Cash got off with just a broke leg, Armstead says. He might have hurt himself bedridden. How far'd you fall, Cash? 28 foot, 4.5 inches, about. About. Okay, yeah, sure. Cash says. I move over beside him. Fellow can sure slip quick on wet planks, Quick says. It's too bad, I say. But you couldn't hope it. The damn dumb women, he says. I made a balance with her. Made it to her measure. Wait. It takes wet boards for folks to fall. It's fixing to be lots of falling before this spell is done. You couldn't hope it, I say. I don't mind the folks falling. It's cotton and corn I mind. Neither does Peabody mind the folks falling. How about it, Doc? It's a fact. Washed clean out in the ground it'll be. Seems like something is always happening to it. Of course it does. That's why it's worth anything. If nothing didn't happen, and everybody made a big crop, do you reckon it'd be worth a raising? Yeah. I'll be darned if I like to see my work washed out in the ground. Work I sweat over. It's a fact. A fellow wouldn't mind seeing it washed up if he could just turn on the rain himself. Who is that man can do that? Where's the color of his eyes? Ah, the Lord made it to grow. It's his'n to wash up if he sees it fitting so. We couldn't have hoped it, I say. Them darn women, he says. In the house, the women begin to sing. We hear the first line commence, beginning to swell as they take hold, and we rise and move toward the door, taking off our hats and throwing our shoes away. We do not go in. We stop at the steps, clumped, holding our hats between our lax hands in front or behind, standing with one foot advanced and our head lowered, looking aside, down at our hats and our hands, and at the earth, or now and then at the sky, and at one another's grave, composed face. The song ends. The voices quaver away with a rich and dying fall. Whitfield begins. His voice is bigger than him. Like they're not the same. It's like he is one and his voice is one, swimming on two horses side by side across the ford and coming into the house, the mud-splashed one and the one that has never even got wet, triumphant and sad. Somebody in the house begins to cry. It sounds like her eyes and her voice were turned back inside her. Listening, we move, shifting to the other leg, meeting one another's eye and making like they hadn't touched. Whitfield stops at last. The women sing again. In the thick air, it's like their voices come out of the air, flowing together and on in the sad, comforting tunes. When they cease, it's like they hadn't gone away, like they just disappeared into the air. And when we moved, we would loose them again out of the air around us, sad and comforted. Then they finish, and we put on our hats, our movements stiff, like we had never wore the hats before. On the way home, Cora's still singing. I am bounding toward my God and my reward, she sings, sitting on the wagon, the shawl around her shoulders and the umbrella open over her, though it is not raining. She is hern, I say, where'er she went. She has her reward in being free of Aunt's bundering. She laid there 3 days in that box, waiting for Darl and Jewel to come clean back home and get a new wheel and go back to where the wagon was in the ditch. Take my team, Aunt, I said. We'll wave her on, he said. She'll want it so. She was ever a particular woman. On the third day, they got back, and they loaded her into the wagon and started it, already too late. You'll have to go all the way around by Sampson's Bridge. It'll take you a day to get there, then you'll be 40 miles from Jefferson. Take my team, Aunts. You'll wait for her. She'll want it so. It was about a mile from the house we saw him, sitting on the edge of the slough. It hadn't had a fish in it, never that I knowed. He looked around at us, his eyes round and calm, his face dirty, the pole across his knees. Cora was still singing. This ain't no good day to fish, I said. You come on home with us, and me and you'll go down to the river first thing in the morning and catch some fish. It's one in here, he said. Dewey Dale seen it. You come on with us. The river's the best place. It's in here, he said. Do we tell seen it? I'm bounding toward my God and my reward, poor son. All right. So that was the funeral service there. We saw the, not quite interment, but at least the words being said over the box. The gathering of the neighbors and the townfolk. And a little bit of internal monologue from the neighbor. He's, kind of, the whole process of the service was, once again, very, very close to home. Faulkner is really good at this, of just pulling a day in the life of the poor rural American South. Just the poor American experience out of nowhere. The neighbors that have their own ideas just coming around, but not really being too invested in everything. It's somewhere a chance to come around, have their voice heard, have their faces seen, and go through the motions as much as anything. A little bit of gossip here and there. And that's really about what you'd expect for people that are acquaintances and friends of the family, so to speak. But, it all feels very shallow. Even the neighbor has got his own, and he's probably the closest that's not immediate family, and he's got his own life to worry about, his own thoughts going through his head, thinking about the crop going on, thinking about the others that are around, thinking of some of the family that are there. Cash in particular, he's at least seems to have a closer relation there. He's doing his best to sort of not disparage ants too much, in the open anyway, but I think the whole town has ideas about the layabout. Kind of understandable to have ideas like that about a man of that sort, but it is what it is. Alright, let's continue on. We can get through a couple more chapters here because they are so short before we go on a break. So, Darl. It's not your horse that's dead, Jewel, I say. He sits erect on the seat, leaning a little forward, wooden-backed. The brim of his hat is soaked free of the crown in two places, drooping across his wooden face so that, head lowered, he looks through it like through the visor of a helmet, looking long across the valley to where the barn leans against the bluff, shaping the invisible horse. See, then, I say, high above the house, above against the quick, thick sky. They hang in narrowing circles. From here, they are no more than specks, implacable, patient, portentous. It is not your horse that's dead. God damn you, he says. God damn you. I cannot love my mother, because I have no mother. Jewel's mother is a horse. Motionless. The tall buzzards hang in soaring circles. The clouds giving them an illusion of retrograde. Motionless. Wooden-backed, wooden-faced, he shapes the horse in a rigid stoop, like a hawk. Hook-winged. They are waiting for us, ready for the moving of it, waiting for him. He enters the stall and waits until it kicks at him, so he can slip past and mount on to the trough and pause. Peering out across the intervening stall tops toward the empty path before he reaches into the loft. God damn him! God damn him! Cash. Won't bounce. If you want it to tote and ride on a bounce, we will have pick up. God damn you, pick up! I'm telling you, it won't tote and it won't ride on a balance unless pick up, goddamn your thick-nosed soul of hell, pick up! It won't balance. If they want it to tote and ride on a balance, they will have... Alright, so this is the arguing with the simple Jewel and the earthy Cash is not going to be a spot of eloquence. That is for certain. And then back to Darl the Thinker. He stoops among us above it, 2 of the 8 hands. In his face, the blood goes in waves. In between them, his flesh is greenish looking. About that smooth, thick, pale green of cow's cud, his face suffocated, furious, his lip lifted upon his teeth. "Pick up!" he says. "Pick up, goddamn your thick-nosed soul!" He heaves, lifting one whole side so suddenly that we all spring into the lift to catch and balance it before he hurls it completely over. For an instant it resists, as though volitional, as though within it her pole-thin body clings furiously, even though dead, to a sort of modesty, as she would have tried to conceal a soiled garment, that he could not prevent her body soiling. Then it breaks free, rising suddenly as though the emaciation of her body had added buoyancy to the planks, or as though, seeing that the garment was about to be torn from her, she rushes suddenly after it in a passionate reversal that flouts its own desire and need. Jewel's face goes completely green. I can hear teeth in his breath. We carry it down the hall, our feet harsh and clumsy on the floor, moving with shuffling steps, and through the door. "Steady in a minute now," Pa says, letting go. He turns back to shut and lock the door, but Jewel will not wait. "Come on," he says in that suffocating voice. "Come on!" We lower it carefully down the steps. We move, balancing it as though it were something infinitely precious. Our faces averted, breathing through our teeth to keep our nostrils closed. We go down the path, toward the slope. "We better wait," Cass says. "I tell you it ain't balanced now. We'll need another hand on that hill." "Then turn loose," Jewel says. He will not stop. Cash begins to fall behind, hobbling to keep up, breathing harshly. Then he is distanced, and Jewel carries the entire front end alone, so that, tilting as the path begins to slant, it begins to rush away from me and slip down the air like a sled upon an invisible snow, smoothly evacuating atmosphere in which the sense of it is still shaped. "Wait, Jewel," I say, but he will not wait. He's almost running now, and Cash is left behind. It seems to me that the end which I now carry alone has no weight, though it coasts like a rushing straw upon the furious tide of Jewel's despair. I'm not even touching it when, turning, he lets it overshoot him, swinging, and stops it, and sloughs it into the wagon bed in the same motion, and looks back at me, his face suffused with fury and despair. "God damn you! God damn you!" Alright, so the simple son is not taking things well. I don't know if you've ever been a pallbearer, but it usually goes a little bit cleaner than that. It doesn't help that it's been a few days, and Ma is starting to go sour in the box, but it's usually a little bit more of an orderly process than that. It's not normally that it's one of the cousins decides to just carry everything by themselves. So this is a less than normal interaction. All right, let's try and get through one more. This is the boy here, and we'll see if this one will break us. Because with the kids, you never know. It might just, at any time, could be just too much. We're going to town. Dewey Dale says it won't be sold because it belongs to Santa Claus. He's taking it back with him until next Christmas. Then it will be behind the glass again, shining with waiting. Pa and Cash are coming down the hill, but Jewel's going to the barn. Jewel, Pa says. Jewel does not stop. Where are you going? Pa says. But Jewel does not stop. You leave that horse here, Pa says. Jewel stops and looks at Pa. Jewel's eyes look like marbles. You leave that horse here, Pa says. We all go in the wagon with Ma, like she wanted. My mother's a fish. Vernon seen it. He was there. Jewel's mother is a horse, Darrell said. Then mine can be a fish, can't it, Darrell? I said. Jewel is my brother. Then mine will have to be a horse too, I said. Why? Darrell said. Pa is your pa. Why does your ma have to be a horse just because Jules is? Why does it? I said. Why does it, Darrell? Darrell is my brother. Then what is your ma, Darrell? I hadn't got here one, Darrell said, because if I had one, and it was, and if it is was, it can't be is, can it? No, I said. Then I am not, Darrell said. Am I? No, I said. I am. Darrell is my brother. But you are, Darrell, I said. I know it, Darrell said. That's why I am not is. Are is too many for one woman to fold. Cash is carrying his toolbox. Pa looks at him. I'll stop at Toll's on the way back, Cash says. Get on that barn roof. It ain't respectful, Pa says. It's a deliberate flouting of her and me. Do you want him to come all the way back here and carry them up to Toll's afoot? Darrell says. Pa looks at Darrell, his mouth chewing. Pa shaves every day now because my mother's a fish. It ain't right, Pa says. Dewey Dale has a package in her hand. She has the basket with our dinner, too. Where's that? Pa says. Mrs. Toll cakes, Dewey Dale says, getting into the wagon. I'm taking them down to town for her. It ain't right, Pa says. It's flouting of the dead. It'll be there. It'll be there come Christmas, she says, shining on the track. She says he won't sell it to no town boys. Yeah, we're getting to the part where the head hurts. It's all getting twisty with nobody dealing with their grief in a healthy manner here. It's almost some absurdisms going on between the boy convinced his mother is a fish, Jewel being simple and obsessed, and Darrell being way too big for his own britches. Pa being the layabout from forever, all of a sudden trying to be the center of everything. Cash just keeping on. This is a mess, and it's going to be a much worse mess, as I imagine, because from here on, they're riding in a small wagon with a rapidly decomposing corpse in a box. And I'm sure everyone is going to be, oh, so lovely about that. Yeah. This is going to go downhill fast. All right, let's go ahead and take a short break here. Top up our drinks, stretch our legs, and we'll be back in just a few minutes where we will continue from Darrell's perspective next. All right, we are back. Hey, and transition is the right button. Huzzah, huzzah. All right, so we've seen the funeral service, such as it is, at least the in-house, as they box Ma up, and they are now getting the family together for a little bit of a road trip off to her hometown. Mind you, she wasn't properly, embalmed or anything like that. No, just stuffed in a box, upside down, with, remember, holes drilled in the box. Mostly plugged up, but holes in the box. And they had to wait about, 3 days after the service, which the service was probably the day after. So they waited about 3 days afterward to leave because they wouldn't take the neighbor's wagon. No. They had to fix their own and take that one. So now, this is going to get so much worse as they are traveling I think they said it was something like 40 miles to the next town with a one-horse cart. This is gonna take some time. All right, let's pick it back up from Darl, the thinker. He goes on toward the barn, entering the lot wooden-backed. Dewey Dell carries the basket on one arm. In the other hand, something wrapped square in a newspaper. Her face is calm and sullen, her eyes brooding and alert. Within them, I can see Peabody's back like 2 round peas and 2 thimbles. Perhaps in Peabody's back 2 of those worms which work surreptitious and steady through you and out the other side, and you waking suddenly from sleep or from waking, with on your face an expression sudden, intent, and concerned. She sets the basket into the wagon and climbs in, her leg coming long from beneath her tightening dress. That lever which moves the world. One of that caliper which measures the length and breadth of life. She sits on the seat beside Vardaman and sets the parcel on her lap. Then he enters the barn. He has not looked back. "It ain't right," Pa says. "It's little enough for him to do for her." "Go on," Cash says. "Leave him stay if he wants. He'll be all right here. Maybe he'll go up to Tolls and stay." "He'll catch us," I say. "He'll cut across and meet us at Tolls Lane." "He would have rid that horse, too," Pa says, "if I hadn't stopped him. Darn spotted a critter wilder than the catamount. Deliberate flouting of her and me." The wagon moves. The mule's ears start to bob. Oh, they're ready with a mule. Okay, yeah, I'm sure that's going to go even better. Behind us, above the house, motionless in tall, soaring circles, they diminish and disappear. Oh yes, reminder, the buzzards are circling over them. Ants. "I told him not to bring that horse out of respect for his dead ma, 'cause it wouldn't look right, him prancing along on a darn circus animal, and her wanting us all to be in the wagon with her, and that sprung her from her flesh and blood. But we hadn't no more than passed Tolls Lane when Darl begun to laugh, sitting back there on the plank seat with Cash, with his dead ma lying in her coffin at his feet, laughing. How many times I told him it's doing such things as that makes folks talk about him. I don't know. I says, I got some regard for what folks say about my flesh and blood, even if you haven't. Even if you have raised such a darn parcel of boys, and when you fixes it so folks can say such about you, it's a reflection on your ma, I says, not me. I'm a man, and I can stand it. It's on your women folks, your ma and sister, that you should care for. And I turned and looked back at him, sitting there laughing. I don't expect you to have no respect for me, I says, but with your own ma not cold in her coffin yet. Yonder, Cash says, jerking his head toward the lane. The horse is Still a right smart piece away, and coming up at a good pace. But I don't have to be told who it is. I just looked back at Darrell, sitting there laughing. I done my best, I says. I tried to do as she would wish it. The Lord will pardon me, and excuse the conduct of them he sent me. And Darrell, sitting on the plank right above her where she was laying, laughing. Darrell. He comes up the lane fast. Yet we are 300 yards beyond the mouth of it when he turns into the road, the mud flying beneath the flickering drove of the hooves. Then he slows a little, light and erect in the saddle, the horse mincing through the mud. Fella's in his lot. He looks at us, lifts his hand. We go on. The wagon creaking, the mud whispering on the wheels. Vernon still stands there. He watches Jewel as he passes, the horse moving with a light, high-kneed driving gait. 300 yards back. We go on, with a motion so soporific, so dreamlike, as to be unifferent of progress, as though time and not space were decreasing between us and it. It turns off at right angles, the wheel marks of last Sunday healed away now, a smooth red scoriation curving away into the pines. A white signboard with faded lettering, New Hope Church, 3 miles. It wheels up like a motionless hand lifted above the profound desolation of the ocean. Beyond it, the red road lies like a spoke, of which Addie Bundren is the rim. It wheels past. Empty, unscarred, the white signboard turns away its fading and tranquil assertion. Cash looks up the road quietly, his head turning as we pass it, like an owl's head. His face composed. Pa looks straight ahead, humped. Dewey Dell looks at the road, too. Then she looks back at me, her eyes watchful and repudiant. Not like that question, which was in those of Cash, for a smoldering while. The signboard passes. The unscarred road wheels on. Then Dewey Dell turns her head. The wagon creaks on. Cash spits over the wheel. A couple of days now it'll be smelling, he says. You might tell Jewel that, I say. He is motionless now, sitting the horse at the junction. Upright, watching us, no less still than the signboard that lifts its fading capitulation opposite him. It ain't balanced right for no long ride, Cash says. Tell him that too, I say. The wagon creaks on. A mile further along, he passes us, the horse, arch-necked, reined back to a swift, single foot. He sits lightly, poised, upright, wooden-faced in the saddle, the broken hat raked at a swaggering angle. He passes us swiftly, without looking at us, the horse driving, its hooves hissing in the mud. A gout of mud, back-flung, plops onto the box. Cash leans forward, takes a tool from his box and removes it carefully. When the road crosses Whiteleaf, the willows leaning near enough, he breaks off a branch and scours at the stain with the wet leaves. Ants. It's a hard country on a man. It's hard. 8 miles of the sweat of his body washed up out into the Lord's earth, where the Lord himself told him to put it. Nowhere in this sinful world can an honest, hard-working man profit. It takes them that runs the stores in the towns, doing no sweating, living off them that sweats. It ain't the hard-working man, the farmer. Sometimes I wonder why we keep at it. Because there is a revolt for us above, where they can't take their motors and such. Every man will be equal there. It will be taken from them that have, and give it to them that have not by the Lord. But it's a long wait, seems like. It was bad. The fellow must earn the reward of his right doing by flouting himself and his dead. We drove all the rest of the day and got to Sampson's at dusk dark. And then that bridge was gone too. They had never seen the river so high. And it's not done raining yet. There was an old man that had never seen or heard of it, but being so in the memory of man. I am the chosen of the Lord, for he who loveth, so doeth he chastiseth. But I be durned if he don't take some curious ways to show it, seems like. But now I can get them teeth. That will be a comfort, it will. Okay, so before we continue, for a moment, let the irony of that sink in. Ants being the one who has self-reported that if he ever sweats, he will die. He's saying that, oh, but the honest, hard-working folk never get ahead. Hypocrisy at its finest. And then in the end, he's like, oh, now that the old bag is gone, he can buy those teeth. Jesus Christ. All right, Samson. I think this is a new character, so we'll see what we have out of this one. I don't know who this is. It was just before sundown. We were sitting on the porch when the wagon came up the road with 5 of them in it, and the other one on the horse behind. One of them raised his hand, and it was going on past the store without stopping. Who's that? Callum says. I can't think of his name. Rafe's twin. That one it was. It's Bundren, from down beyond New Hope, Quick says. There's one of them Snopes horse Jules for riding. I didn't know there was a air one of them horses lived, McCallum says. I thought you folks down there finally could try to give them all away. Try and get that one, Quick says. The wagon went on. I bet old man Lon never gave it to him, I says. Nah, Quick says. He bought it from Pappy. The wagon went on. They must not have heard about the bridge, he says. What are they doing up there anyway? Callum says. Taking a holiday since he got his wife buried, I reckon, Quick says. Heading for town, I reckon. With Tull's bridge gone too, I wonder if they ain't heard about the bridge. They'll have to fly then, I says. I don't reckon there's e'er a bridge between here and the mouth of Ishitawa. They had something in the wagon. But Quick had been to the funeral 3 days ago. And we naturally never thought anything about it, except they were heading away from home mighty late, and they hadn't heard about the bridge. You better holler at him, Callum says. Darn it, the name is right at the tip of my tongue. So Quick hollered, and they stopped, and he went to the wagon and told them. He came back with them. They're going to Jefferson, he says. The bridge at Tull's is gone, too. Like we didn't know it. His face looked funny, around the nostrils. But they just sat there, Bundren and the girl and the chap on the seat, and Cash on the second one, the one folks talks about, on a plank across the tailgate. And the other one, on that spotted horse. I reckon they was used to it by then, because when I said to Cash they'd have to pass by New Hope again, and what they better do, he just says, I reckon we can get there. I ain't much for meddling. Let every man run his own business, suit himself, I say. But after I talked to Rachel about them not having a regular man to fix her, and it being July and all, I went back to the barn and tried to talk to Bundren about it. I gave her my promise, he says. Her mind was set on it. I notice how it takes a lazy man, a man that hates moving, to get set on moving once he does get started off. Same as he was set on staying still. Like it ain't the moving he hates so much as the starting and the stopping. And like he would be kind of proud of whatever came up to make the moving or the setting still look hard. He sat there on the wagon, hunched up, blinking, listening to us tell about how quick the bridge went and how high the water was. And I'd be darned if he didn't act like he was proud of it, like he had made the river rise itself. You say it's higher than you ever seen it before, he says. God's will be done, he says. I reckon it won't go down much by morning neither, he says. You better stay here tonight, I says, and get an early start for New Hope tomorrow morning. I was just sorry for them bone-gaunted mules. I told Rachel, I says, well, would you have had me turn them away at dark, 8 miles from home? What else could I do? I says, it won't be but one night, and they'll keep it in the barn. And they'll surely get started by daylight. And so I says, you stay here tonight, and early tomorrow you can go back to New Hope. I got tools enough, and the boys can go on right after supper and have it dug and ready if they want. Then I found that girl watching me. If her eyes had been pistols, I wouldn't be talking now. I'd be dog if they didn't blaze at me. And so, when I went down to the barn, I come on them, her talking so she never noticed when I come up. You promised her, she says. She wouldn't go until you promised. She thought she could depend on you. If you don't do it, it will be a curse on you. Can't no man say I don't aim to keep my word, Faulkner says. My heart is open to air, man. I don't care what your heart is, she says. She was whispering, kind of talking fast. You promised her. You've got to. Then she seen me and quit, standing there. If they'd been pistols, I wouldn't be talking now. So, when I talked to him about it, he says, I give her my promise. Her mind is set on it. But it seems to me she'd rather have her ma buried close by so she could, it's Addie I gave the promise to. He says, her mind is set on it. So I told them to drive it into the barn because it was threatening to rain again and that supper was about to be ready. Only they didn't want to come in. I thank you, Faulkner says. We wouldn't discommode you. We got a little something in the basket. We can make you out. Well, I says, since you are so particular about your women folks, I am too. And when folks stops with us at mealtime and won't come to the table, my wife takes it as an insult. So the girl went on to the kitchen to help Rachel, and then Jewel come to me. Sho, I says, help yourself out in the loft. Feed him when you bait the mules. I'd rather pay you for him, he says. What for? I says. I wouldn't begrudge no man a bait for his horse. I'd rather pay you, he says. I thought he said extra. Extra for what? I says. Want to eat hay and corn? Extra feed, he says. I feed him a little extra. I don't want him beholden to no man. You can't buy no feed from me, boy, I says. And if he can eat that loft clean, I'll help you load the barn onto the wagon in the morning. He ain't never been beholden to no man, he says. I'd rather pay you for it. And if I had my rathers, you wouldn't be here at all, I want to say. I just says, then it's high time he commenced. If you can't buy no feed from me. When Rachel put supper on, her and the girl went and fixed some beds, but wouldn't any of them come in. She's been dead long enough to get over that sort of foolishness, I says, because I got just as much respect for the dead as e'er a man. But you got to respect the dead themselves. And a woman that's been dead in a box 4 days, the best way to respect her is to get her into the ground as quick as you can. They wouldn't do it. It wouldn't be right, Faulkner says. Because it's the boys want to go to bed. I reckon I can sit up with her. I don't begrudge her it. So when I went back down there, they were squatting on the ground around the wagon, all of them. Let that chap come in the house and get some sleep anyway, I says. And you better come too, I says to the girl. I wasn't aiming to interfere with them. And I surely hadn't done nothing to her that I knowed. He done already asleep, Faulkner says. They had put him to bed in a trough in an empty stall. Well, you come on then, I said to her. But still, she never said nothing. They just squatted there. Can't hardly see him. How about you boys? I said. You got a full day tomorrow. After a while, Cash says, I thank you. We can make out. We wouldn't be beholden. Mother says, I thank you kindly. So I left them squatting there. I reckon after 4 days they was used to it, but Rachel wasn't. It's an outrage, she says. An outrage. What could he have done? I says. He give her his promised word. Who talking about him? She says. Who cares about him? She says, crying. I just wish that you and him and all the men in the world that torture us alive and flout us dead, dragging us up and down the country. Now, I says, you're upset. Don't you touch me, she says. Don't you touch me. A man can't tell nothing about them. I live with the same one 15 years, and I will be darned if I can. I imagine a lot of things coming up between us, but I'd be darned if I ever thought it would be a body 4 days dead, and that a woman. But they make life hard on them not taking it as it comes up, like a man does. So I laid there, hearing it commence to rain, thinking about them down there squatting around the wagon, and the rain on the roof, and thinking about Rachel crying there. So after a while, it was like I could still hear her crying, even after she was asleep, and smelling it, even when I knowed I couldn't. I couldn't decide even then whether I could or not. It wasn't just knowing it was what it was. So next morning, I never went down there. I heard them hitching up, and then when I know they must be about ready to take out, I went out in front, went down the road toward the bridge until I heard the wagon come out of the lot and go back toward New Hope. Then when I come back to the house, Rachel jumped on me because I wasn't there to make them come in to breakfast. You can't tell about them. Just about when you decide they mean one thing, I'd be darned if you not only haven't got to change your mind, like as not, you got to take a raw hiding for the thinking they meant it. But it was still, I could smell it. So I decided then that it wasn't smelling it, but it was just knowing it was there. Like you would get fooled now and then. But when I went to the barn, I knew different. When I walked into the hallway, I saw something. It kind of hunkered up when I come in, and I thought at first it was one of them got lift. Then I saw what it was. It was a buzzard. It looked around and saw me and went on down the hall, spraddle-legged, with its wings kind of hunkered out, watching me first over one shoulder and then over the other. An old bald-headed man. When it got outdoors and begun to fly, it had to fly a long time before it ever got up into the air, with it thick and heavy and full of rain like it was. If they was bent on going to Jefferson, I reckon they could have gone around up by Mount Vernon like McCallum did. He'll get home about a day after tomorrow, horseback. Then they'd just be 18 miles from town. But maybe this bridge being gone too has learned him the Lord's sense and judgment. That McCallum, he'd been trading with me off and on for 12 years. I had known him from a boy up. Know his name as well as I do my own, but be darned if I can say it. So, a little bit of an outside perspective on this last chapter. Not quite a neighbor, but I guess when you're out in the sticks like that, about 20 miles from home might as well be a neighbor. But, whew, that's, poor guy's getting it on both ends. Trying to be a good host, get them to come in, because the wife is making him, and then when they refuse to, it's his fault. And then can't catch a break. Can't catch a break. And all because this family is just weird. This whole family has got more than a few screws loose. All right. Dewey Dell. The signboard comes inside. It is looking out at the road now because it can wait. New Hope, 3 miles, it will say. New Hope, 3 mile. New Hope, 3 mile. And then the road will begin, curving away into the trees. Empty with waiting, saying, New Hope, 3 miles. I heard that my mother is dead. I wish I had time to let her die. I wish I had time to wish I had. It's because in the wild and outraged earth, too soon, too soon, too soon. It's not that I wouldn't and will not. It's that it's too soon, too soon, too soon. Now it begins to say it. New Hope, 3 miles. New Hope, 3 miles. That's what they mean by the womb of time, the agony and the despair of spreading bones, the hard girdle in which lie the outraged entrails of events. Cash's head turns slowly as we approach, his pale, empty, sad, composed, and questioning face following the red and empty curve. Beside the back wheel, Jewel sits the horse, gazing straight ahead. The land runs out of Dar's eyes. They swim to pinpoints. They begin at my feet and rise along my body to my face, and then my dress is gone. I sit naked on the seat above the unhurrying mules, above the travail. Suppose I tell him to turn. He will do what I say. Don't you know he will do what I say? Once I walked the black void rushing under me. I could not see. I saw Vardaman rise and go out the window and strike the knife into the fish, the blood gushing, hissing the steam like steam, but I could not see. He'll do as I say. He always does. I can persuade him to anything. You know I can. Suppose I say, turn here. That was when I died that time. I suppose I do. We'll go to New Hope. We won't have to go to town. I rose and took the knife from the streaming fish and still hissing, and I killed Dar. When I used to sleep with Vardaman, I had a nightmare once. I thought I was awake, but I couldn't see and couldn't feel, and I couldn't feel the bed under me, and I couldn't think I couldn't think of my name. Couldn't even think I'm a girl. I couldn't even think I think I wake up nor remember what was opposite to awake, so I could do that. I knew that something was passing, but I couldn't even think of the time when all of a sudden I knew that something was it was wind blowing over me. It was like the wind came and blew me back from where it was. I was not blowing the room, and Vardaman sleeping all of them back under me again and going on like a piece of cool silk dragging across my naked legs. Oh, calm down. Christ almighty. Stop for breath, please. Faulkner, give me a comma, give me a period, give me something. It blows cool out of the pines, a sad, steady sound. New Hope was 3 mile. Was 3 mile. I believe in God, I believe in God. Why didn't we go to New Hope, Pa? Vardaman says. Mr. Sampson said we was, but we done passed the road. Dar says, look, Jewel. But he is not looking at me. He's looking to the sky. The buzzard is as still as if he were nailed to it. We turn into Tull's Lane. We pass the barn and go on, the wheels whispering in the mud, passing the green rows of cotton in the wild earth, and Vernon little across the field. Behind the plow, he lifts his head as we pass and stands there looking after us for a long while. Look, Jewel, Dar says. Jewel sits on his horse like they were both made out of wood, looking straight ahead. I believe in God, God, God. I believe in God. All right, yeah, this whole family is cockeyed. Jeez, oh Pete. The neighbor, okay, this is a little bit normal, hopefully. Tull. After they passed, I taken the mule out, looped up the trace chains, and followed. They were sitting in the wagon at the end of the levee. Ant was sitting there, looking at the bridge where it was swagged down into the river with just the 2 ends in sight. He was looking at it like he had believed all the time the folks had been lying to him about it being gone. But like he was hoping all the time it really was. Kind of pleased astonishment he looked, sitting on the wagon in his Sunday pants, mumbling his mouth, looking like an uncurried horse dressed up. I don't know. The boy was watching the bridge, where it was mid-sunk and logs and such drifted up over it, and it swagging and shivering like the whole thing would go any minute. Big-eyed, he was watching it. He was to a circus. And the gal, too, when I come up, she looked round at me, her eyes kind of blaring up and going hard like. I had made to touch her. Then she looked at Ants again, and then back to the water again. It was nigh up to the levee on both sides. The earth hid, except the tongue of it we was on going out to the bridge and then down into the water. Except for knowing how the road and the bridge used to look, a fellow couldn't tell where was the river and where the land. It was just a tangle of yellow, and the levee not less wider than a knife back kinda, with us sitting in the wagon and on the horse and the mule. Doll was looking at me, and then Cash turned and looked at me with that look in his eyes, like when he was figuring on whether the planks would fit her that night. Like he was measuring them inside of him, and not asking you to say what you thought, not even letting on he was listening if you did say it, but listening all right. Joel hadn't moved. He sat there on the horse, leaning a little forward, with that same look on his face when him and Darl passed the house yesterday, coming back to get her. If it was just up, we could drive across, Aunt says. We could drive right on across it. Sometimes a log would get shoved over the jam and float on, and rolling and turning. We could watch it go on where the ford used to be. It would slow up and whirl crossways and hang out of the water for a minute. You could tell by that the ford used to be there. But that don't show nothing, I say. It could be a bar of quicksand built up there. We watched the log, and the gal is looking at me again. Mr. Whitfield crossed it, she says. He was a horseback, I say. That was 3 days ago. It's 5 foot since. If the bridge was just up, Aunt says. The log bobs up and goes on again. There's a trash and foam, and you can hear the water. But it's down, Aunt says. Cass says, Careful, fellow. Walk across yonder on plank and logs. You couldn't tote nothing, I say. Like the time you set your foot on that mess, it'll all go, too. What do you think, Doll? He's looking at me. He don't say nothing. Just looks at me with them queer eyes of his. It makes folks talk. I always say it ain't never been what he done so much as said, or anything so much as how he looks at you. It's like it got into the inside of you, some way. Like somehow you was looking at yourself and your doings out in his eyes. Then I can feel that gal watching me, like I'd made to touch her. She says something to Aunt's. Mr. Whitfield, she says. I gave her my promised word in the presence of the Lord, Aunt says. I reckon it ain't no need to worry. But still, he does not start the mules. We sat there, above the water. Another log bobs up over the jam and goes on. We watch it check up and swing slow for a minute, where the ford used to be. Then it goes on. It might start falling tonight, I say. You could lay over one more day. Then Joel turns sideways on the horse. He has not moved until then. He turns and looks at me. His face is kind of green. And we go red and then green again. Get the hell on back to your damn plow, he says. Who the hell asked you to follow us here? I never meant no harm, I say. Shut up, Joel, Cash says. Joel looks back at the water. His face gritted, going red and green and then red. Well, Cash says after a while, what do you want to do? Ants don't say nothing. He sits humped up, mumbling his mouth. He was just up. We could drive across it, he says. Come on, Jewel says, moving the horse. Wait, Cash says. He looks at the bridge. We look at him, except Ants and the gal. They're looking at the water. Dewey Dale and Vardaman and Paul better walk across on the bridge, Cash says. Vernon can help him, Jewel says. And we can hitch his mule and head on. You ain't going to take my mule into that water, I say. Jewel looks at me. His eyes look like pieces of a broken plate. I'll pay you for your damn mule. I'll buy it from you right now. My mule ain't going into that water, I say. Jewel's going to use his horse, Darl says. Why won't you risk your mule, Vernon? Shut up, Darl, Cash says. You and Jewel both. My mule ain't going into that water, I say. Vernon Tull has the patience of a saint. He is getting it from every direction here, and is just like being as good a neighbor as he can without being up in their business, just being around, available if needed. Man deserves better than this family being all neighborly. All right, Darrell. He sits the horse, glaring at Vernon, his lean face suffused up to and beyond the pale rigidity of his eyes. The summer when he was 15, he took a spell of sleeping. One morning when I went to feed the mules, the cows were still in the tie-up, and then I heard Pa go back to the house and call him. When we came on back to the house for breakfast, he passed us, carrying the milk buckets, stumbling along like he was drunk. He was milking when we put the mules in and went out onto the field without him. We had been there an hour, and still he never showed up. When Dewey Dell came with our lunch, Pa sent her back to find Jewel. They found him in a tie-up, sitting on the stool, asleep. After that, every morning, Pa would go in and wake him. He would go to sleep at the supper table. As soon as supper was finished, he would go to bed. And when I came into bed, he would be lying there like a dead man. Yet still, Pa would have to wake him in the morning. He would get up, but he wouldn't hardly have half sense. He would go stand for Pa's jawing and complaining without a word, and take the milk buckets and go to the barn. And once I found him asleep at the cow, the bucket in place and half full, and his hands up to the wrists in the milk, and his head against the cow's flank. After that, Dewey Dell had to do the milking. He still got up when Pa waked him, going about what we told him to do in that dazed way. It was like he was trying hard to do them. He was as puzzled as anyone else. "Are you sick?" Ma said. "Don't you feel all right?" "Yes," Jewel said. "I feel all right." "He's just lazy, trying me," Pa said, and Jewel standing there, half asleep on his feet like as not. "Ain't you?" he said, waking Jewel up again to answer. "No," Jewel said. "You take off and stay in the house today," Ma said. "With that whole bottom piece to be busted out," Pa said, "if you ain't sick, what's the matter with you?" "Nothing," Jewel says. "I'm all right." "All right," Pa says. "You're asleep on your feet this minute." "No," Jewel said. "I'm all right." "I want him to stay at home today," Ma said. "I need him," Pa said. "It's tight enough. With all us can do it." "You just have to do the best you can with cash and doll," Ma said. "I want him to stay in today." But he wouldn't do it. "I'm all right," he said, going on. But he wasn't all right. Anybody could see it. He was losing flesh, and I have seen him go to sleep chopping. Watch the hoe going slower and slower up and down with less and less of an arc, till it stopped, and he leaning on it motionless in the hot summer of the sun. Ma wanted to get the doctor, but Pa didn't want to spend the money without it was needful. Excuse me. Cheap ass. And Jewel did seem all right, except for his thinness and his way of dropping off to sleep at any moment. He ate hearty enough, except for his way of going to sleep in his plate, with a piece of bread halfway to his mouth and his jaw still chewing, but he swore he was all right. It was Ma that got Dewey Dell to do his milking, paid her somehow, and the other jobs around the house that Jewel had been doing before supper, she found some way for Dewey Dell and Vardaman to do them. And doing them herself when Pa wasn't there. She'd fix him special things to eat and hide them for him. And that may have been when I first found it out, that Addie Bundren should be hiding anything she did. Who had tried to teach us that deceit was such that in a world where it was, nothing else could be very bad or very important, not even poverty. And at times, when I went in to go to bed, she would be sitting in the dark by Jewel where he was asleep. And I knew that she was hating herself for that deceit and hating Jewel because she had to love him, so that she had to act the deceit. One night, she was taken sick, and when I went to the barn to put the team in and drive to tolls, I couldn't find the lantern. I remembered noticing it on the nail the night before. It wasn't there now at midnight, so I hitched in the dark and went on, and came back with Mrs. Tull just after daylight. And there the lantern was, hanging on the nail where I remembered it, and couldn't find it before. And then one morning while Dewey Dell was milking just before sunup, Jewel came into the barn from the back, through the hole in the back wall with the lantern in his hand. I told Cash, and Cash and I looked at one another. "Rotten," Cash says. "Yeah," I said. "But why the lantern? And every night, too. No wonder he's losing flesh. Are you going to say anything to him?" "Won't do any good," Cash said. "What's he doing now? What he's doing now won't do any good either." "I know. He'll have to learn that himself. Give him time to realize that it'll save. There'll be just as much tomorrow morning. Much more tomorrow. He'll be all right. I wouldn't tell anybody, I reckon." "No," I said. "I told Dewey Dell not to. Not Ma, anyway." "Nope, not Ma." After that, I thought it was right comical. He acting so bewildered, and willing, dead for sleep, and gaunt as a beanpole, and thinking he was so smart with it. And I wondered who the girl was. I thought, of all, I knew that it might be, but I couldn't say for sure. "Ain't any girl," Cash said. "It's a married woman somewhere. Ain't any young girl got that much daring and staying power. That's what I don't like about it." "Why?" I said. "She'll be safer for him than a girl would. More judgment." He looked at me, his eyes fumbling, the words fumbling at what he was trying to say. "It ain't like always the safe things in this world that a fellow—" "You mean the safe things are not always the best things?" "Ah, best," he said, fumbling again. "It ain't the best things that are good for him. A young boy. Fellow kind of hates to see wallowing in somebody else's mire." That's what he was trying to say. When something is new and hard and bright, there ought to be something a little better for it than just being safe. Just the safe things are just the things that folk have been doing so long they've worn the edges off. There's nothing to the doing of them that leaves a man to say, that was not done before, and it cannot be done again. So we didn't tell. Not even when, after a while, he'd appear suddenly in the field beside us and go to work. Not having had time to get home and make out he had been in bed all night. He would tell Ma that he hadn't been hungry at breakfast, or that he had eaten a piece of bread while he was hitching up the team. But Cash and I knew that he hadn't been home at all on those nights. He'd come up out the woods when we got to the field, but we didn't tell. Summer was almost over then. We knew that when the nights began to cool, she would be done if he wasn't. But when fall came, and the nights began to get longer, the only difference was that he would always be in bed for Pa to wake him, getting him up at last in the first state of semi-idiocy, like when it first started. Worse than when he'd stayed out all night. She's sure a stayer. She's sure a stayer, I told Cash. I used to admire her, but I downright respect her now. "Ain't a woman," he said. "You know," I said, but he was watching me. "What is it then?" "That's what I am to find out," he said. "You can trail him through the woods all night if you want to," I said. "I'm not." "I'm trailing him," he said. "What do you call it then?" "I'm trailing him," he said. "I don't mean it that way." And so, a few nights later, I heard Jewel get up and climb out the window. Then I heard Cash get up and follow him. The next morning, when I went to the barn, Cash was already there, the mules fed. He was helping Dewey Dell milk. And when I saw him, I knew that he knew what it was. Now and then I would catch him watching Jewel with a queer look, like having found out where Jewel went and what he was doing, and had given him something to really think about at last. It was not a worried look. It was the kind of look I would see on him when I would find him doing some of Jewel's work around the house. Work that Pa still thought Jewel was doing, and that Ma thought Dewey Dell was doing. So I said nothing to him, believing that when he got done digesting it in his mind, he would tell me. But he never did. One morning, it was November then, 5 months since it started, Jewel was not in bed, and he didn't join us in the field. That was the first time Ma learned anything about what had been going on. She sent Vardaman down to find where Jewel was. And after a while, she came down too. It was as though So long as the deceit ran along quiet and monotonous, all of us let ourselves be deceived, abetting it, unawares, or maybe through cowardice, since all people are cowards and naturally prefer any kind of treachery because it has a bland outside. But now it was like we had all, by a kind of telepathic agreement of admitted fear, flung the whole thing back like covers on the bed, and we all sitting bolt upright in our nakedness, staring at one another and saying, "Now is the truth. He hasn't come home. Something has happened to him. We let something happen to him." Then we saw him. He came up along the ditch and then turned straight across the field, riding the horse. Its mane and tail were going, as though in motion, carrying out the splotchy pattern of its coat. He looked like he was riding on a big pinwheel, barebacked, with a rope bridle, no hat on his head. It was a descendant of those Texas ponies Flem Snopes brought here 25 years ago and auctioned off for $2 a head. And nobody but old Long Quick ever caught his, and still owned some of the blood, so he could never give it away. He galloped up and stopped, his heels in the horse's ribs, and it dancing and swirling like the shape of its mane and tail and the splotches of its coat had nothing whatever to do with the flesh and bone horse inside him. And he sat there, looking at us. "Where did you get that horse?" Pa said. "Bought it," Jewel said, "from Mr. Quick." "Bought it?" said Pa. "With what? Did you buy that thing on my word?" "It was my money," Jewel said. "I earned it. You won't need to worry about it." "Jewel," Ma said. "Jewel." "It's all right," Cash said. "He earned the money. He cleaned up that 40 acres of new ground Quick laid out last spring. He did it single-handed, working by night by lantern. I saw him. I don't reckon that horse cost anybody anything except Jewel. I don't reckon we need worry." "Jewel," Ma said. "Jewel." Then she said, "You come right to the house to get to bed." "Not yet," Jewel said. "I ain't got time. I got to get me a saddle and bridle. Mr. Quick says he..." "Jewel," Ma said, looking at him. I'll give. Then she began to cry. She cried hard, not hiding her face, standing there in her faded wrapper, looking at him and looking at him on the horse, looking down at her, his face growing cold and a little sick looking, until he looked away quick, and Cash came and touched her. "You go on the house," Cash said. "This here ground too wet for you. You can go on now." She put her hands to her face, and then, after a while, she went on, stumbling a little on the plow marks. But pretty soon she straightened up and went on. She didn't look back. When she reached the ditch, she stopped and called Vardaman. He was looking at the horse, kind of dancing up and down by it. "Let me ride, Jewel," he said. "Let me ride, Jewel." Jewel looked at him. Then he looked away again, holding the horse rein back. Pa watched him, mumbling his lip. "See, you bought a horse," he said. "You went behind my back and bought a horse. You never consulted me. You know how tight it is for us to make by. You bought a horse for me to feed. Taking the work from your flesh and blood, and bought a horse with it." Jewel looked up at Pa, his eyes paler than ever. "He won't never eat a mouthful of yours," he said. "Not a mouthful. I'll kill him first. Don't you never think it. Don't you never." "Let me ride, Jewel," Vardaman said. "Let me ride, Jewel." He sounded like a cricket in the grass, a little one. "Let me ride, Jewel." That night, I found Ma sitting beside the bed where he was sleeping, in the dark. She cried hard. Maybe because she had to cry so quiet. Maybe because she felt the same way about tears she did about deceit. Hating herself for doing it. Hating him because she had to. And then I knew that I knew. I knew that as plain on that day as I knew about Dewey Dell on that day. This whole family, I swear, man. Between Jewel working through the night to get himself money to buy a horse, which, good on him, but worried his family was sick because he was keeping it secret and all. And then the whole family being right pissed at him for doing it. And then his brothers that are assuming he's out having an affair, but no, he's just out working. Oh, man. This family wasn't right long before Ma passed. Yeah. All right, let's get through another chapter or two. I'd like to hit the 50% mark, and we are at 49.8. So yeah, probably just one more chapter, and we'll be at that mark. So we got a few minutes. Yeah, a lot of these families that they don't talk to each other. There's no communication. It's just expected of certain things. And then if you don't live up to those expectations, well, you're a failure. And it just keeps on going in circles and circles and circles. There is guilt for days. Yeah, we all know families like that. All right, tall. So they finally got Ants to say what he wanted to do. And him and the gal and the boy got out of the wagon. But even when we were on the bridge, Ants kept on looking back. Like he thought, maybe, once he was out in the wagon, the whole thing would kind of blow up. He would find himself back yonder in the field again. And her laying up there in the house, waiting to die and it to do all over again. You ought to let them take in your mule, he says. And the bridge shaking and swaying under us, going down into the boiling water like it went clean through the other side of the earth, and the other end coming up out in the water like it wasn't the same bridge at all. And that would walk up out in the water on the other side must come from the bottom of the earth. But it was still whole. You could tell that by the way when this end swagged. It didn't look like the other end swagged at all. Just like the other trees in the bank yonder were swinging back and forth slow like on a big clock. And them logs scraping and bumping at the sunk part and tilting end up and shooting clean out in the water and tumbling on toward the ford and they wait, slick, whirling and foaming. What good would that have done, I says. If your team can't find the ford and haul it across, what good would 3 mules or even 10 mules do? I ain't asking of you, he says. I can always do for me and mine. I ain't asking you to risk your mule. It ain't your dead. I am not blaming you. They all went back and laid over until tomorrow, I says. The water was cold. It was thick, like slush ice. Only it kind of lived. One part of you knowed it was just water, the same thing that had been running under the same bridge for a long time. And when them logs would come spewing up out in it, you were not surprised that there was pot of water, or the waiting and the threat. It was like when we was across, up out of the water again, and the hard earth under us, that I was surprised. It was like we hadn't expected the bridge to end on the other bank, on something tame like the hard earth again that we had tromped on before this time, and knowed well. Like it couldn't be me here, because I'd have had better sense than to do what I had just done. And when I looked back and saw the other bank and saw my mule standing there where I used to be and knew that I'd have to get back there some way, I knew it couldn't be. I just couldn't think of anything that could make me cross that bridge ever even once. And here I was. And a fellow that could make himself cross it twice couldn't be me. Not even if Cora told him to. It was that boy. I said, "Here, you better take hold of my hand." He waited and held to me. I'd be darned if it wasn't like he come back and got me. Like he was saying they won't nothing hurt you. Like he was saying about a fine place he'd know where Christmas come twice with Thanksgiving and lasts on through the winter and the spring and the summer. And if I just stayed with him, I'd be all right too. When I looked back at my mule, it was like he was one of these here spyglasses. And I could look at him standing there and see all the broad land and my house sweated out in it like it was the more than sweat. The broader the land, the more the sweat, the tighter the house, because it would take a tight house for Cora to hold Cora like a jar of milk in the spring. You got to have a tight jar, or you'll need a powerful spring. So if you ever not have a big spring, why then you have the incentive to have a tight, well-made jars, because it's your milk, sour or not. Because you would rather have milk that was sour than to have milk that won't, because you are a man. And him, holding my hand. His hand that hot and confident. so that I was like to say, look here, can't you see that mule yonder? He never had no business over here, so he never come. Not being nothing but a mule. But because a fellow can see ere now and then that children have more sense than him, but he didn't like to admit it to them until they have beards. After they have a beard, they are too busy, because they don't know if they'll ever quite make it back to where they were, in a sense, before they was head. So you don't mind admitting to them, to folks that are worried about the same thing, that it ain't worth the worry that you are yourself. Then we was over. We stood there, looking at Cash, turning the wagon around. We watched him drive back down the road where the trail turned off into the bottom. After a while, the wagon was out of sight. We better get on down to the fold and get ready to help, I said. I gave her my word, Aunt says. It is sacred on me. I know you begrudge it, but she will bless you in heaven. Well, they got to finish circumventing the land before they can dare the water, I said. Come on. It's the turning back, he said. I ain't no luck in turning back. He was standing there, humped, mournful, looking at the empty road beyond the swaggering and swaying bridge. And that gal, too, with a lunch basket on one arm and the package under the other, just going to town, bent on it. It would risk the fire and the earth and the water, and all just to eat a sack of bananas. You ought to laid over a day, I said. It would have fell by morning. It might not have rained tonight. It can't get no higher. I gave my promise, he says. She is counting on it. All right, let's go ahead and get a bookmark in here, because we are just a little over halfway here. And let's shift over to the other one, bring it back here. So, we're getting a little out of the depressing part. Well, there is still some depression going on, but we're into the definite territory of the weird. The idiosyncrasies and just downright strangeness of this family are coming into full focus. And it seems like everyone around them, the neighbors and such, mostly have a feel for things. You've got your own little personal quirks and such, but generally, it seems like most of the people are in their... They've got their heads on right, for the most part. Yeah, that's right. We're getting into the Gothic and Southern Gothic, where shit gets weird, and you get into the cerebral, the down and dirty of the real life sort of thing. And this is every bit of it. Yeah. Things get a little weird out in the sticks. Real life is weird for everybody, but these guys, whoo, boy, have they got it in spades. Alright, guys, so with that, we can end not quite on a high note, because I don't think there are high notes in this book, but at least not down in the depths. We're in the weird, not in the sad. And I'm okay with that. I can deal with that. The little bits of irony here and there. The lazy old man calling out the lazy is never not going to be funny. So things like that will be our sources of joy in this. And, the little bits where Faulkner forgets that punctuation exists as someone goes on through a fever dream of a half-page paragraph. I'm pretty sure he didn't really intend for this to be read aloud. And yes, I think right from the beginning, it's been clear that the father is kind of a real piece of work. And the worst part is, I think all of us know people like this. Like, he's not that much of an exaggeration. There are always going to be people who will be sitting there blaming everybody else for their own problems when they don't even pick up a foot, lift a finger to solve their own things. So that's Ants in a nutshell. He is like the epitome of a walking, talking victim complex. And we all know folks like that. We all do. Now we're getting back into the depression. We don't need to root this thing in real life. We don't. Alright, guys. With that, let's go ahead and wrap up for the evening. We will be back on our normal next reading. We'll be picking this back up on Friday. We should probably have about 2 days left on this. I expect we should probably be finishing on Sunday, I'd imagine. Or not, finishing on Saturday, I'd imagine. We'll see how it goes out. Because we are through the halfway point. They are still wandering around the countryside in the deep south with a rotting body in a box. That's... If you need a moment, let that sink in. This is the midpoint of the story. And there are... It's as you do in those days. Make sure you tie an onion to your belt, that sort of thing. Alright. Until next time, let's go ahead and have a good evening and try to catch some little bit of, I don't know, upside, joy, whatever you can find in the next couple of days, because we might need a little bit of something to keep us going through the rest of this book. I will say, it's better than Thoreau. This isn't bad, it's just weird. Alright, good night, guys. Until next time.